Well, hello there, and welcome to your midweek moment for Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. As most of you know, I selected the scripture readings that I'm going to talk about in church on any given Sunday from the readings that are suggested in something called the Revised Common Lectionary. And all the Revised Common Lectionary is simply a list of recommended readings for the various Sundays of the church year. And on most Sundays, the lectionary offers you a selection of 4 readings. There's always a reading from the Old Testament. There's always a reading from the New Testament, but not from the Gospels, which means there's always a reading that is from the Gospels. And then the 4th reading is always a reading from the book of Psalms. Sometimes it's an entire psalm, or sometimes it's just a portion of a longer psalm, but whatever it is, each and every Sunday of the church year, the Revised Common Lectionary recommends a reading from the Psalms. And over the years, I have preached on the gospel readings a lot. I mean, at one time or another, I think I've preached on all the gospel readings. I've probably preached on the Old Testament and the New Testament readings more than some preachers, but up to this point, I have never, ever preached on one of the readings from the Psalms. And I'm not really sure why that is. I just never have. So what I was thinking I would do for the next several weeks with the midweek moment is do something about that and spend, let's say the midweek moments from now through Lent, let's say, talking about the lectionary reading, the psalm reading from the lectionary for every given week. Now, you don't have to worry about that. I'm not saying that I'm going to preach a complete sermon on it, so you don't have to panic. But I'll take just a couple of minutes a week to talk about the psalm readings, and maybe at the end of this process, we will all have a better understanding of and appreciation for the book of Psalms. That being the case, the one we'll start with is the psalm reading that's appointed for this coming Sunday, and that is Psalm 62. Naturally, the lectionary only appoints verses 5 through 12, but I'm going to read the whole thing because, well, you know, it's the Bible, so it's all pretty good. So Psalm 62 reads like this. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation. My fortress, I shall never be shaken. How long will you assail a person? Will you batter your victim, all of you, as you would a leaning wall or a tottering fence? Their only plan is to bring down a person of prominence. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone my soul waits in silence, for my hope is from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, I shall not be shaken. On God rests my deliverance and my honor, my mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust him at all times, O people, pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no confidence in extortion, and set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, do not set your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and steadfast love belongs to you, O Lord. For you repay to all according to their work. Now, when I was reading the psalm there just a couple of seconds ago, some of those lines may have seemed familiar to you. In fact, for some of you, it may have reminded you of one of the hymns we sing here in church, maybe one of your favorite hymns. The hymn I have in mind, of course, is Martin Luther's great hymn, A Mighty Fortress is Our God. And if some of the lines in Psalm 62 reminded you of some of the lines in Luther's hymn, well, that's not an accident. The reason that happens is because when Luther sat down to write A Mighty Fortress is Our God, it was Psalm 62 that sort of served as his inspiration. And the reason Luther turned to Psalm 62 when he was getting ready to write his hymn was because both the hymn and the song make the same basic point. And that point is that faith in God is the only reliable anchor for human living. Now, I know that sounds like the sort of thing that you would expect the Bible to say, but to really understand what it means, you've got to understand the sort of faith that both Luther and the author of the psalm are talking about. Because, faith it's one of those words, it's one of those religious words that we use in a bunch of different ways, and it's kind of slippery. We can use the word faith, I suppose, in two different ways. The first way we can use it is simply to say that we believe something is true, or that something exists. If, for example, somebody might come into my office and tell me that it's raining outside, and I may take it on faith that that's true. And when I say I take it on faith, the only thing I mean is that I believe the person is telling me the truth. I don't immediately get up and run outside to make sure that it really is raining. I take it on faith that it's true. But all I'm really doing is accepting that that person is telling me something that's factual. There's another way we use the word faith, though. And that's when we say, maybe that we say we have faith in someone, or we have faith in something. And when we use the word faith that way, what we're really talking about is some person who we think is reliable or trustworthy, someone we think we can depend on. And that's the sort of faith that the author of Psalm 62 is talking about. That's the sort of faith that the psalmist believes is the only reliable anchor for human living. And the reason the psalmist says this is because, or the psalmist believes this, he says, or she says, is because ultimately everything else, or everyone else who we can put our faith in, is going to come up short. And it may be that at one time or another in your life, you've had some personal experience in this. Maybe there was a time in your life where you put your faith in someone who maybe you shouldn't put your faith in. Maybe you depended on someone who wasn't very dependable. Maybe you trusted someone who really wasn't very trustworthy. Well, that's the sort of thing the psalmist means. That's one of the reasons the other things that we can put our faith in ultimately come up unreliable, because sometimes they really don't have our best interests at heart. But even the people who really sincerely do have our best interests at heart ultimately will come up short. Because there may be a time in your life where you face a situation where they just can't help you, even if they really, honestly, and sincerely want to. And that's why the psalmist says that it's only faith in God, it's only trust in God that is the only reliable anchor for human living. Because not only does God always have our best interests at heart, not only does God always love us and always care for us, but God is always able to meet our needs. God is always capable of giving us the help that we need. That's why the psalmist says that faith in God is the only reliable anchor for human life, because ultimately, everyone or everything else that we can put our faith in will sooner or later come up short.